And my biggest question for you is, what do we do next? Do we do round 3 of the male R&B groups, or is it time to shift over and do the ladies, the female R&B group tier list?
Yes, show the ladies some love. Yes, that's what you need to do next.
What is she doing here? She only pops up when we talk about Beyonce. Well, why are you here?
Well, you're gonna be talking about Beyonce because when you do the female list, obviously you gotta talk about Destiny's Child.
Yeah, she's got me there. Let me fill you players in on something from a brother who has been married for almost 2 decades now. Yes, I'm an old head. Happy wife, happy life. And happy viewers, because yes, today we are going to do what y'all asked me to do. We are bringing back the tier list, and this time we're going to show the ladies of R&B some love. The female R&B group tier list is on deck today.
Yay, you finally listened to me. I'm so excited. I know you're going to talk about my girl's Destiny's Child.
We know why she's here. Let's just get on with it. Let's go. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions right here on YouTube. And yep, it is finally time to show love to the ladies of R&B, the female R&B group tier list. I am a huge fan of groups. I miss them so much. And the female groups are some of the greatest groups of all time. We're going to talk about some hidden gems. We're talking about some legends. We'll talk about some female groups that y'all forgot about. We'll talk about some that deserve more love than they got. That's what we do here. We're showing love to the entire genre. But before we get started, for those new to the game, I'm going to show you how things go down. Producer D Roth, show the wonderful people the tier list. All right, as you see, at the bottom of our screen there, we have 21 R&B groups of the female persuasion. Lots of legends, lots of forgotten groups. We're going to show them love today. So over on the left, you'll see the rankings. The S tier is reserved for the legends, the ones who put us on game, the ones who've changed the game, the top of the top. Then we have A, B, C, and of course, player please. Do not end up in that player please tier. That ain't it. But we'll see who ends up getting there today. So, before we get started, before we get down to business, let's talk about what we always do. Take a second, just take 1 second and hit like on this video. You know, it's right over there. Just hit the like button. It costs you nothing, but it means a lot to you, boy. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get more content like this. And when we're done, make sure you share it with the R&B lovers in your life because, look, we got to keep the genre going. We struggling out here in some cases. So let me help you put your friends onto the good stuff and have some good combo. Let's get ready to get started and getting in a little bit of trouble. The R&B female group tier list is on. And we start out with Vanity 6. Yeah, I'm starting out with one that's kind of obscure, but if you're from the 80s, you remember Vanity 6. These were Prince's girls. And honestly, these ladies were all about the sex. We had no business listening to them. They basically wore lingerie on stage. Prince was doing his Prince thing, and they were his female avatar, so to speak. I liked them, but honestly, besides the one single they had, they really didn't have a lot going on. They had one album. They had a little bit of brief notoriety, but not a lot of substance behind that. So they were cool for their time. But I can't give them any higher than a C tier. And we're starting out kind of low. But don't worry, we'll pick up. Alright, next up, yep, it's those DC ladies. Destiny's Child. So, look, I got my Destiny's Child albums right here. Let me just do the seance, smash them together so I can summon my lovely wife to the conversation, because I know this is what she wanted to do anyway, so.
Bruh, I've been here the whole time.
Well, you've been quiet the whole time. I didn't know you were still here.
I was trying to be nice. You were talking about my girl's Vanity 6. That was actually, fun fact, that was my first album I ever owned, which is totally inappropriate because I was a child, but I digress.
That explains a lot. Anyway, we already ranked Vanity 6. Let's talk about Destiny's Child.
Yes, DC.
I'll let you go into it. And before we get started, we know there have been 18 different versions of Destiny's Child. We are incorporating all of the DC universe, except not the Superman version. Shout out to James Gunn. All Destiny's Child. We talking about Farrah too. So all the Destiny's Child. Your thoughts, ma'am?
I loved all of Destiny's Child. And, you know, I know people are going to say, oh, of course you did, because you are Beehive, you're Beyonce stan. But no, I actually wasn't a Beyonce stan back in the day, believe it or not. But I was still a fan of Destiny's Child. I feel like I grew up with their music, and their music grew up with me. Their music matured as they matured, and as I matured, because I'm the same age as Destiny's Child for the most part. And so their music was a soundtrack of all of these different eras of my life. And so yes, nostalgia has a lot to do with it, but I do also feel like it's good music. I mean, those girls can sing. They can sing.
And look, all these albums that I listed, that is close to 5 stars. This album is so dope, y'all have forgotten about it. This album is close to 5 stars. This is an album, but the rest of them are all pretty good. So, I know where I will put them on the tier. Ma'am, where would you put them? I'm going to let you handle this one.
I would put them on S, the S tier. Because, as you said, did they change the game? Yes, they changed the game.
But you didn't do it right. This is how we do the S tier. S tier! S tier. That's how you have to do the S tier. But I agree. I think they're S tier. Look at us. Look at us agreeing.
I know, agreeing.
Look at that.
What?
It don't happen often, y'all.
It'll never happen again.
No, probably not. We can't even figure out where we're going to dinner most times. All right, up next are the Mary Jane girls. Now, they aren't remembered as strongly today as they probably should be, but they had a pretty solid 80s run. In My House was like the big single that I remember, and then All Night Long. They had a couple of joints, and it's kind of weird that we don't talk about them enough, but when I think about it, it makes sense. They just didn't transition well as R&B started to change as we went into the 80s. They kind of got left behind. So, unfortunately, they didn't transition, and I think they could have done a great job, but they were kind of stuck. They were kind of stuck in their era. But for what they were, I thought they were really, really good. So I am gonna hit them with a B tier. Moving on up to the B tier, Roth. I think they deserve that. And next up is another set of girls. These are the good girls. They dropped kind of at the end of the 80s, right in the midst of New Jack Swing era. And there were a lot of female artists that were really capturing New Jack Swing sound that I remember. Karen White was one, but there weren't too many. But these ladies, they did that. And their run, once again, was pretty brief. I hate saying, we're going to say that a lot in this list. There's a lot of brief runs here. They had Your Sweetness, which was all over the place for like a half a year. I swear that song, they played it into the ground. But besides that, and they had a couple albums, they didn't really do much beyond that initial run. So unfortunately, I can't give them any higher than a C tier. Let's move them to C. Oh, this is an easy one. We are at SWV. SW to the V to the SWV. My girls. Probably my favorite girl group of all time. With one exception that we're going to get to in a minute. But honestly, one of the greatest vocalists of all time. Even today, they still kill it. To the point where Kendrick Lamar, as of this video, just dropped a new album that samples Use Your Heart. Oh my God, that song is incredible. And their voices are just so memorable. They've been the soundtrack for so many great songs throughout the 90s. And the thing that's most impressive about SWV is after they had that run in the 90s and then kind of called it quits 97, 98, They came back in 2012 like they hadn't lost a step. Those comeback albums in the early 2010s, they were so good. A little bit overlooked, but still great quality. This is so easy. Say it with me. S tier, because they deserve it. SWV is one of the greatest of all time. If I was ranking the S tiers, they're probably going to be number one in the S tier ranking. They're that dope. Alright, next up are the Emotions, another one of the most influential groups of all time that don't really get the recognition that they deserve, but that's why I'm going to recognize them today. Because the songs that they have, people know, but it's like they don't know that they have these songs. Don't Ask My Neighbor, that's them. What Do the Lonely Do, the saddest but greatest Christmas song of all time, that's them. Best of My Love, that's them. They are always at the forefront of some of the best music of the 70s, but you just don't ever hear them brought up as much as you should. And their influence is so heavy. Like, I hear them all up in some Destiny's Child. So I think that just because of that alone, between their incredible 70s run, there wasn't just a critical success, it was a commercial success too. And a lot of black artists, they didn't get a lot of commercial success in those eras, but they did. Like, they had #1 charting songs, they had platinum albums, gold albums. That was a rarity for us back then. So yes, you factor in the dopeness, the legacy, the sales, easy S tier, and easy S tier. Oh, I didn't do it. S tier, easy S tier for my girls, the Emotions. Now we are at Climax. I'll be honest, I even didn't remember how many albums Climax had until I was doing research for this post. I only remember them having like 1 or 2, but they had a bunch of albums in the 80s. I know, of course, Meeting in the Ladies' Room, that's the big song, I Miss You. They definitely had a decent run during that 80s era. And it is so unfortunate that I keep bringing up a lot of these 80s artists. It seems like they just kind of got lost to time almost. You rarely hear about Climax. They were really good, but I don't know. Going into this, I expected to give them a solid C tier, but after doing my research and seeing that they were around a little bit longer than I remember, and they actually put out some decent stuff, those albums were good, I'll be generous. I'm in a good mood today. It's the season of giving. Let's give Climax a B tier. I think they are a little bit underrated and deserve a little bit more love than they get. Hold up, hold up, hold up. Yes, we are here. This is it. I talked a little bit earlier about my favorite female R&B groups of all time. We're here, and it probably comes to no surprise if you followed my stuff for years. Kut Klose. Yes, my favorite, my girls. And I know that most people say, well, of course you like them. They're just 3 female Key Sweats. Yes, that's why I like them, because they're 3 female Key Sweats. Kut Klose is so great, and I know that a lot of people kind of lump them into this category of being Key Sweat's background singers because their vocals were featured on so many of his hits. But see you sleeping, because if you have checked out their album, Surrender, in 1995, it is so well done. And it seems like in recent years that younger fans have discovered this album. I've had so many people hit me up in the past 6 months and are like, have you heard this album? Or did you know about this album? Or did you know this album was great? Yes, I knew it was great. I had it in 1995. I used to play Chrono Trigger with that in the background. Shout out to my video game heads. They know Chrono Trigger is the GOAT. So when I think about Chrono Trigger, I think about this album. It is a great album. Kut Klose were great. And unfortunately, even though they're S tier in my heart, we only got the 1 album from them and then some select stuff here and there. So I can only give them as high as B tier. Even though we all know S should be for Sweat and they should be S tier. But I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be fair and unbiased. Next up is TLC, and I don't even need to waste my breath on this one. An easy S tier. But I guess I will waste a little bit of my breath and talk about how influential these ladies were if you missed it in 1995. Or just the mid-90s in general. Because it's so easy to think back and be like, what we see in music now was like how it always was, but it wasn't. Representation was not the same. TLC came out. They were talking about sexual health and having sex. They were talking about AIDS. They were talking about domestic violence. This was stuff that wasn't really covered regularly in music. And they were not saying it with metaphors. They were explicitly saying it. They were literally wearing condoms on their body. They were talking about being abused or being objectified for their bodies. And they were just so powerful in telling the stories of women on a different level. It was more than just, I'm sad because my man broke up with me. It's talking about things that women step through daily. It resonated with me, and I wasn't even a woman. And beyond that, of course, we got the great songs. We got the influential production. And their albums just set the tone for what would come decades after. Even the way they were set up. We had T-Boz with the rasp. We had Chili with the more traditional R&B vocals. Left Eye just rapping like a maniac. Stuff that we take for granted now, they were the first to do it and have that set up. By far one of the most influential groups of all time, male or female, any genre, S tier. S tier for my girls. Oh yes, and now we have Isyss, or if your name is Jadakiss, Icy. If you follow me, you know I've talked about Isyss many times. I am a big fan of Isyss, and they should have done so much more. They came out around 2002, right around the time that SWV had already gone, Escape were gone, TLC was kind of out the back door, Destiny's Child was about to pack it in. There was space for them to be that new kind of hip-hop slash pop slash R&B group, and their album was great. Their singles were incredible. I still listen to them today, and they just vanished. They just poofed. They just Thanos snapped into the ether, and I was so sad about it. So, as great as they were, as much potential as they had, I can only go see because we didn't get enough of them. And I know somebody, I know how y'all do, I know somebody's going to say, oh, well, you gave Kut Klose a B. Why didn't you give them a C? They only had one album too. Well, let me tell you something before you run up in my mentions player. Kut Klose was able to have a bigger career because they not only had that album, they also had the work with Keith Sweat. They had a lot of features. They were features on big songs, Nobody, Twisted, and that sort of thing. Isyss didn't really have that level. Even though they both had two strong albums, I think that Kut Klose was a little bit higher on the list. I'm just getting ahead of y'all because I know how y'all get in the comments. So, I love Isyss. Don't make me judge between my Icy. I feel like I'm picking my favorite daughter here. But I love Isyss, but I can only go C tier. Man, they should have... If anybody needs a comeback, Icy needs a comeback because we got room for y'all. Come back, Icy, come back. And now we are at 702, another one of my favorite groups. I'm going to date myself here, but my first album, when I got my driver's license, the first albums I had in my car were Redman's Muddy Waters, Mary J's Share My World, and this album. I wore those things out as I was driving around. And when I think about that album, I think about those early days of freedom and just driving and doing whatever I want. I love 702. Their debut album is great. I'm glad that, I feel like at the time it was a little overlooked, but as time has moved on, it's been much more appreciated. They had some great singles. The album cuts were really good. It was a solid piece of work. Their second album sounded completely different, a different sound, but it was equally very good. The third album, not so much, but it did have a couple really good singles on it. I Still Love You is one of the best songs they ever did. I'll never forget a interview that Pharrell had where he said that that was his favorite beat at the time that he had produced, the beat for that song. So 702 was great, but again, just felt like their run was too short. They were around from 96 till about, I don't know, 2002 or so. So we didn't have them very long. Then they broke up, and we saw them, of course, on the reality show, the BET show, and they went through so much turmoil, R.I.P. Irish, R.I.P. Orish, so much loss, a lot of heartbreak in their story. But I remember them fondly, and I'm sure so many of you also remember them just as fondly. I gotta go B tier for my girls, they deserve it. And now we are at Cherish. Remember how I said in the 2000s we didn't really have a lot of female groups? We did have Cherish in the mid-2000s. And they had a little bit of success with that Do It, Do It, Do It, Do It. Oh, 106 in Park wore that song out. I was so sick of that. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. Do I have to hear this song 100 times? It wore me out. I wasn't the biggest fan of Cherish. They had a couple albums. Again, pretty short window. They were only around a couple of years. They had a song called Amnesia that I really liked. But besides that, they didn't really do too much for me. They would go on, two of the sisters, Fallon and Felicia Wick, they went on to become good writers, and they had a good solid career as writers. As if you watch that BET show Encore, oh my gosh, they sure talked about that to death. They were the villains of that show and they drove me nuts. But the point is, they had successful careers as a duo kind of outside of the group, but the group itself just never felt like it measured up to their potential. I'm gonna go with a C. C for Cherish. C for Cherish. Lord have mercy, we are at MoKenStef. MoKenStef. The definition of one-hit wonders. Monique, Keisha, and Stephanie formed a group. They came out with a song called He's Mine. And that song, let me tell you about this song. This song, they spent the whole song yelling at the woman that their man cheated on them with. Why? Why are you mad at the person that your man was cheating with and not the man? Why are you supporting the man? That woman has no loyalty to your relationship. The man does. Why are you not holding that brother accountable? Why are we mad at this woman over here? That song drove me nuts even as a teenager. I was like, this don't make any sense. But the song was actually pretty good. And the remix was even better. I love that remix. Shout out to Grand Puma. He was on that joint. And the album, unfortunately, got completely overlooked. They had a second single. It's called like Sex in the Rain. That song was really good. So even though they're in that one-hit wonder box because people only remember them for that one song, they actually had some joints. The album wasn't bad. The second single was good, even though I think I saw it on BT maybe one time. I have a faint memory of the video. I could have just completely Mandela effect that whole thing. But we certainly know about He's Mine and that Bob. We ain't forgot that. Technically, these ladies should probably go and play a please. Just because they just didn't do enough and they're kind of remembered only as memes today. But I really thought their album was good. I thought there was potential as a group. I liked the second single. So I'm going to be generous. I'm going to give them a C. I'm not going to throw them in to play a please. I think we can give them a little bit of leeway for that. Next up is Total. Everybody loved Total, but I'll be honest with y'all. My frustration with Total is like so many other people on this group, unfulfilled potential. We only got, they debuted 95, 96. They had their second album in 98, and then they were out of here. By the time that we got to the new millennium, they were gone. So what, a half a decade at best? And it's so weird because they were on so many of the Bad Boy projects when Bad Boy was at its peak. They seem ever present. They seem like they had a bigger reach than they had because they had such memorable singles. The two albums were good. The features were memorable. They had to join on the Soul Food soundtrack. And then we got nothing. So it's hard because in my heart, it seems like they should be A because they seemed like they were everywhere. But when you actually look at them as a group, they just didn't do enough as I wanted them to do or that they could have done. So I'm going to have to pull Total down to B tier instead of A tier. Man, I can't get any A's. What's going on, ladies? Alright, next up is Nothing Nice. And am I missing something? I've seen a lot of conversation on Twitter and Blue Sky about Nothing Nice lately. I'm like, are they going viral on TikTok or something? Because even in the 90s, I don't remember people talking about Nothing Nice that much. So for those who don't remember, circa 95 or so, it was the freak era. I know y'all think now is the freak era. No, 95, we were the pioneers of the freak era. So think of Nothing Nice as like 3 Adina Howards in a group, except the music wasn't nearly as good or as memorable. So they had a lot of freaky songs, like they had some joints. And it wasn't even that the sex bothered me. It was just, everything was so generic. Everything sounded the same. I remember listening to the album years ago. It just sounded like boilerplate 1995 sex R&B. Just wasn't memorable. They had more than one single. They had 3 or 4 singles. None of them really made an impact with me. I don't think they made an impact. Clearly they made an impact with some fans because they're still talking about them. But no, man, it's just not enough here for me. Sorry, Nothing Nice. I gotta not be nice to you. Play it please for my girls. I'm sure the Nothing Nice committee will come for my head on that one, but gotta be fair and honest. Not enough there for me. Alright, back to the land of unfulfilled potential with another group I was very, very invested in 1997, and that would be Allure. Man, if you have not heard their debut album, please go check out Allure's album. It was great. It had writing from Mariah Carey. It had production from the Trackmasters. It had rappers like Raekwon and LL Cool J and Nas. I mean, this is like a star-studded project from a group that really seemed to come out of nowhere. And the album was so good. And then we got a couple albums after that weren't so good. And this list is making me so frustrated because there are so many groups we're talking about that should have been so great. They should have been so incredible. But after one project, the momentum got derailed. If we were judging this just off the one album, I'd throw them in A tier. I love that album that much. But the stuff that followed was okay at best. But not only was it just okay, it got no visibility. I barely remember any of these songs on radio or on video. It just completely went under the radar. Allure. I want to give y'all A for Allure, but I gotta give you C for All Cried Out, because I'm all cried out. Man. Alright, next up is Changing Faces. I've seen some weird hate for Changing Faces lately. I don't know what's that about. Maybe it's the association with R. Kelly, because that'll cause anybody to hate. But it's like, it wasn't their fault that he produced some of their songs. They were very good. They had this very easy, smooth tone to them. Very just, not to steal a word, but alluring. I love their vocals. And they had like that attitude. Not only were they smooth and easy and just melodic, but they had some bite to their lyrics. I thought they were very, very good. We got a couple of albums. Albums were all good. Some great memorable singles. But once again, they showed up around 95. By like 2000, they were out of here. They had an album in 2000, that was it. So really only like a half a decade of material, so they can't really measure up to the S tier ladies. But what we had was really good. A lot of it is very memorable. I think that's strong enough for a B tier ranking. Okay, up next is Jade. Now, Jade is a group that is quite unfairly, labeled as one-hit wonders. Because everybody knows Don't Walk Away. We love Don't Walk Away. But they were way more than Don't Walk Away. I Wanna Love You was just as big, if you want to talk about charts, as that song was. And in fact, if you check out the singles between their 2 albums, pretty much all of them, almost all of them, were all like top 15 on the chart. So these were not failures. They had a very, very good run, but I sound like a broken record, a very short run. We got 2 albums from them over the span of like 3 or 4 years, and then shoot, they were out of here. But they were great. They had great vocals, great presence. They could perform. Oh, they were dancing. They were like killing it on the stage. There was so much there, but we never got to the next level with them. They were a group, in my opinion, that if they kept the momentum rolling and they were able to adjust their sound in the late 90s, get some of those Timberland beats or something behind them, I think that they could have been one of the more dominant groups of the decade. But they were gone as quick as they came. So, another group that could have easily been an A tier, but I'm going to have to go B just because we didn't have them long enough. Next up is Floetry, and y'all, I'm starting to sound like a broken record. I know you're getting annoyed with me, but I'm looking at these groups and I keep having the same thing. Floetry is another really, really, really good group that didn't stay around long enough. And look at their makeup. Their makeup was perfect. You had Marsha, who was just the songstress, the beautiful vocals that came from her. And then you had Natalie, who was, you know, who had the poetic spoken word kind of aspect. And that was something we hadn't really seen. Like we've had the MC and the singer, but like on one album for every song and then interjecting, but we had more of as a spoken word kind of poetic aspect to it. That's really dope. Some should probably steal that concept today. I think it would do very well. Anyway, Floetry was great. Their debut album, which is over there somewhere, incredible piece of work. One of the best albums of the 2000s. Their second album, you could tell that the focus was off. They tried. It wasn't nearly as tight as the first one. And then we didn't have them anymore. Once again, a short run, barely a half a decade, and they went their separate ways. Of course, Marsha went on to have a great solo career. Great album this year, in fact. And we had some stuff from Natalie still doing her thing. I follow her on Instagram. She's still doing her thing as well. So, a great album, a great duo, but not the greatest duo that we really could have had in their era. In this era of neo-soul in the early 2000s, they could have dominated. And we got a taste of what they could have been, but it should have been more. I wanted a whole meal. I didn't want a sample. Let's go B tier. B tier for my girls. All right, if you remember this group, you get the gold star for the day, because I can't think of too many other than R&B diehards who remember Soul Plush. And you don't remember them because we never got the album. So Soul Plush was a group that was under Dark Child's kind of watchful eye. So you already know. You already know they're going to be dope. They're going to be, the writing's going to be there, the production's going to be there, and it was. And besides a song on the Blue Streak soundtrack, we didn't really get much from them. Their album was supposed to drop, and then they got dropped. And then we didn't get the album. However, if you want to hear the album, it's in full right here on YouTube. Go check that out after you finish watching and sharing and liking and subscribing to this video, of course. So once you do that, go check that album out. Technically, because they are so obscure, that should qualify them for the Player Please category. But I have heard the album. The album is very good. The single was very good. Their presence was there. They could have been great, and it feels unfair to just throw them in Player Please for stuff that was out of their hands. So I'm going to give them C tier. I'm going to be generous. Make sure you check out the album. Check them out. We lost something that could have been really dope there, I think. And we will wrap up with 3LW, 3 petty women. I mean, 3 little women. Lord, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you know the story of 3LW, the tumultuous history, how they came into the game with so much potential. Once again, I thought they were going to be one of those groups to kind of get into that pop R&B niche that Destiny's Child was about to leave vacant. And it didn't happen. Their first album I thought was really fun. That was one of the albums I got from Columbia House or something for like $2.99. I expected nothing of it. I liked the single, the Promises and the Player Please. You know I like that. And I enjoyed the album way more than I thought. But the subsequent albums, you could tell the wheels were falling off of every album. Every album got a little weaker than the one before it. There were great singles there, and they had lots of potential as a trio. But you could tell, like, something wasn't really connecting. And then we got the infamous incident where they broke up by throwing chicken at each other. Y'all, look, as a black man, I am offended that you are wasting good fried chicken by throwing it at your enemy. Just punch your enemy and then take their chicken. I would respect that more than you wasting chicken, throwing it, having food fights in the car. What a mess. Anyway, besides that, if you look at their body of work, it wasn't bad. The first album by far was their best stuff. They had a song on the Barbershop soundtrack that I love, Could Have Been You. That could have been a single. That should have been a video. And they had some stuff later on, but by the time you got to the Christmas album, you had group members dipping, and then the final album didn't even come out because people were just fed up. So they just crumbled under their own design. But what we got wasn't bad. I'm not going to count the Cheetah Girls, I feel like that's an offshoot. That's a whole separate group, so I won't include that. If I included that, the score might raise a little bit. But just for 3LW, I'm going to have to go with C. because there just isn't enough there. C for creating too much drama when y'all should have been much better. Please, we need y'all to do better. I know y'all were little girls at the time, but wasted potential yet again. Alright, I guess we'll stop here for now. We've done enough damage for today. So, producer D Roth, show the beautiful people the finished product. Show them what we got. And look at that. It's as beautiful as the Mona Lisa itself. I'm talking about the Mona Lisa the singer, not the lady in the painting. So, that's it. That's where everybody landed. It's crazy. We don't have anybody in the A tier. That's weird. But we'll figure that out next time. Because yes, there will be a next time. I know some of y'all are saying, where's In Vogue? Where's Escape? Where are the Supremes? Can't give y'all everything at once. We will come back and we will do a part 2 at some point. So let me know what you think in the meantime. What did you think of the rankings? Who should have been a little bit higher? Who should have been a little bit lower? If your name is Mo or Ken or Steph and you want to slash my tires, don't be mad at me. Be mad at the dude that you were defending in that song. Stop being mad at that woman. She didn't do anything wrong. She had no loyalty. Be mad at that man. And don't be mad at this man either. This edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions is a wrap. Are you going to be back next time?
I don't know, maybe. You know, I have to make sure you're not totally off on your rankings and everything, you know, especially when you're talking about the ladies. Gotta keep an eye on you. So I might be back. We'll see.
Can't wait for that. Play on, players.